Throw a dart and you'll hit a million videos on YouTube showing you the off-road performance of the new Land Rover Defender. But how does it go as a daily driver in the city? Let's find out. Land Rover did a very brave thing in launching the new Defender, and that's just the mere fact that it's new, because the old model dates back some 70 years and has a cult-like following. But design regulations necessitated the creation of a brand new model, and well, here it is, a fresh new design that still has echoes of the past, but I think it still looks really, really good. I do have to say that I think the front is actually not this car's best angle. It's very big and we've got a lot of horizontal lines here. It looks kind of like a Ford SUV from the 1990s, but I do like the headlight design and also the big Defender badging up here on the front of the bonnet. The back of the Defender is probably its best angle. I really like these small light clusters. They're simple and they're very bright and easy to see. There's no tow bar on this car, but should you option one, there is a 3,500 kilo brake towing capacity. Large spare wheel on the back, you're not going to miss that. And the rear door opens outwards to reveal a pretty small storage space, just 397 litres. That's with the rear seats up. Lower them down, of course you do get a bit more room, but there is a big step there, and also the rear seats don't fold completely flat. Also in the back, you'll notice there is a built-in air compressor and hose. This allows you to inflate and deflate your tyres when you're off-road to help improve traction. This particular model of the Defender is called the 90S, which puts it just above the entry-level model. The 110 is the four-door version, which is much bigger than this. I really like the sleek, clean lines, and the Pangea green colour that this car is painted in looks great as well. We've got the nice little Land Rover Defender signature window up here on the ceiling, and this car does ride up very high, and that's helped by these big 18-inch steel wheels that I've got to be honest, I didn't really like at first, but they have kind of grown on me. There's a few different engine choices available with the Defender. If you're more serious about going off-road, you might be thinking about the 6-cylinder diesel. There's also a petrol V8. And then we've got this, a surprisingly lively 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged engine that outputs 221 kilowatts of power and 400 newton meters of torque. And I think on paper that makes it just about the most powerful 2-litre engine I've encountered. This thing really does get along. The only problem is fuel economy, which is a not so great 10.1 litres per 100 kilometres on a combined cycle. While the interior of the Defender is certainly more comfortable than the car it replaces, I wouldn't go so far as calling it luxurious, although there is a great mix of materials in here and it does feel quite premium. We've got soft touch material up here on the dash with a bit of leather and some stitching, some hard, durable plastics that actually really feel rock solid and well made. I really like these exposed rivets here on the door panel with the textured plastic and the colour-coded metal here from the outside too. The Defender was the first car in the Jaguar Land Rover family to score the new P300 Pro system, which is one of my favourite infotainment systems in any car. It looks really good, it's really easy to use, it's a very simple, clean design. The navigation especially is probably second only to Audi in terms of how well it works. There's wireless Apple CarPlay also, although to be honest it is a little bit flaky with how well it connects to my phone. It does tend to drop in and out a little bit. The only thing that's a letdown with this system in this car anyway is the standard sound system. It has 6 speakers and it cannot handle any bass at all without every plastic panel on the back of the car vibrating. It sounds terrible. Whatever you do, spend the money, get the premium Meridian sound system. You will not regret it. Some pretty rudimentary climate control buttons underneath that. They're really easy to use and feel actually really well made. And then this whole center console is actually customizable. I believe in some cars you can actually option this as a third seat, but here we've actually got a proper console that's been bolted in, and you can see the bolts there right here. But it pretty much gives you 2 levels of storage, because we've got a huge tray down the bottom here and then another one up top with cup holders and a nice center bin which has got a nice soft touch lid on it. This bin's actually quite deep, and there's a USB-C and a USB-A port plus a 12-volt outlet too. The entry-level Defender comes with analog dials, but this 90S version scores an all-digital cluster, and I think it's certainly worth upgrading to, just because you can do so much more with it, including having full-screen maps on here which look really, really good, or you can have 1 or 2 dials. It's entirely up to you. I really like this steering wheel with its powder white inserts that match the rest of the interior, and look, I think this is such a good look. I know that white is probably going to get dirty really, really quickly, but for now, while it's new, it looks great. We've got some clusters bunches of buttons up here on the wheel, which operate the same way as the rest of the Jaguar Land Rover family, but here they're made out of a much more durable plastic, and you can feel that they're just going to be a lot more hard wearing. There's a manual tilt and a reach adjustment for the wheel just underneath there on the column. No paddle shifters, but we do have a couple of nice stalks here, which have got a nice solid feel to them as well for the indicators, lights, and windscreen wipers. As I mentioned before, you do ride up very high in the Defender, so visibility all around is really good. We've got big windows, a very light glass house, so you can see all around you really clearly. The wing mirrors are huge. The rear vision mirror is actually also a screen which is connected to a camera on top of the shark's fin aerial on the roof, which gives you a very clear view of what's behind you, all up to around about the last 2 meters or so. Where you really can't see anything at all. So when you're reversing, do not rely on that screen to work out where you're going. Make sure you're looking at the P300 Pro screen, because you won't see any object or person who might be really close to you. The seats in this particular Defender are a mixture of robust textile, that's what they call this material here on the outside, and leather on the inside. They're pretty comfortable. There's 8 ways of manual adjustment, but weirdly, electric lumbar adjustment. That's the only electric adjustment available on these seats. Now, just a word of warning about the rear seats of the Land Rover Defender. Whatever you do not try to put your elderly relatives in the back of this car on Christmas Day. It will end in near tragedy. I somehow managed to get my mother in here for the brief trip from her place to my place for Christmas lunch, but she couldn't actually manage to maneuver herself out. And I started having visions of having the SES coming and cutting off the roof of this car to lift her out of the top, and then me explaining to Jaguar Land Rover why their 2-door Land Rover Defender 90 has now suddenly become a drop top, which is an option they actually don't offer. Fortunately, we managed to swing her around, lower these rear seats, and get her out of the boot. So, moral of the story is the rear seats are for young, fit people, not for the elderly. But having said all of that, the Land Rover Defender 90 is really not aimed at families. It's aimed at couples who want to go camping and maybe towing some stuff. And if you need to put people in the back seat, you can, and they're actually going to be quite comfortable, because I'm here behind my own seating position. I'm 190 centimeters tall. I'm actually not touching the seat in front of me, and this is actually really quite comfortable. There's a Jesus bar here to hang on to if we're going to do some serious off-roading with this retractable cloth roof. If it was a nice sunny day and the sun was coming in with a nice breeze, it would actually be really nice back here. And these seats are actually really quite comfortable. In the center, we've got a couple of air vents for the air conditioning, 2 more USB-C outlets, and 2 more 12-volt outlets. Okay, I can see now, maybe I was a bit unfair on my mother. It is actually kind of tricky to get out of here. I'm trying not to knock the camera over. Well, it must be said that driving this car, it just eats up bumpy roads. And I'm not off-road at the moment, obviously. I'm just driving on a suburban street, but it's not the best suburban street, and the Land Rover Defender is just gliding over everything with no issues at all. It just doesn't feel remotely perturbed by anything, as it shouldn't. I mean, this thing is designed to literally climb up the side of a mountain, and I'm not asking it to do that today. Now, I've got to admit that on paper, a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo engine in a car this size doesn't sound like very much. But when you put your foot down, as I'm about to do as I get onto the freeway, this car has so much go. It just flies. I mean, this is a 2.1 ton SUV, and it really moves. The 0 to 100 time on paper is 7.1 seconds. And to be honest, it feels a little quicker than that. The great thing with the suspension in this car, it's coil suspension, but it's really well done. So much so that you don't have that sort of truck-like bouncing around feeling that you get in some other lower end SUVs. It just feels so perfectly balanced. Even though this is a 2-door SUV and only half the size of the 4-door version, it's still a little bit of a chore to park this thing, especially in shopping centre car parks, and that's just because of the sheer girth. I mean, it's huge. You have good visibility, but there are still massive blind spots all around the chassis. So There are a number of cameras dotted around the outside of the car connected to the Pivi Pro system, so you can actually get that great augmented 360-degree view of your car as you park. It still fits into pretty much every car space, but because of the size of these doors, getting in and out can be a little bit of a problem. So if you park close to a wall or another car, you've just got to be very careful not to scratch the paintwork. Oh yeah, going up this hill here, lots of power, lots of go. Going around the corner, mountains of traction. Not only does this engine feel more powerful than it probably is, it also sounds a lot louder. It sort of sounds halfway between a diesel and a petrol. Now, even though this is a road test, not an off-road test of the Land Rover Defender, there are a few different drive modes that I'll mention, and they're controlled here on the climate control panel, which is a bit of a strange place to put them, but nonetheless, here they are. We've got Eco, Comfort, Grass, Gravel, Snow, Mud Ruts, Sand, and Rock Crawl. And the later off-road modes also engage the differentials underneath the car to help you maintain grip as you go up and down hill. There's also hill descent control and low gear too. I'm amazed that in a car this size, people still somehow manage not to see you. Check your blind spot. This car does get a bit of attention. I've had a few people stop me and chat about it over the week I've had it, including one guy who came and parked his old Land Rover Defender 90 next to mine in a car park. And then I spotted him kind of sizing up his versus mine and sort of comparing the differences. I took a photo of the two of them next to each other just to see how sort of similar yet different these two cars are. Starting at around 83 grand and 13,000 more for how you see it here, the Land Rover Defender 90S is the ultimate off-road machine. It can go anywhere. Can you live with it as a daily driver around town? Yeah, sure you can. But would you really want to? I mean, for the same money, you could get into a far more refined and comfortable SUV. If you do decide to get one of these as your daily driver, just know that the Land Rover Defender is ready and waiting and more than willing to take you just about anywhere you want to go.